Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
This is your time. This is your call to arms. For the Cryptid Connection is your voice. I'm your host, Jennifer.
And I'm your host, Stephen. Welcome to Cryptid Connection. I want to give a shout out to a few people. We've got Justin Edge, Sean Post, Mayhem Actual, VA Swamp Squatch, and Cy Chris. I want to welcome all of you to the community.
The Cryptid Connection podcast is brought to you by CryptidConnection.com, a website dedicated to you, one who has interest in all things cryptid and paranormal. CC is a place where you can enjoy a hassle-free lifestyle and community of Bigfoot pursuit. All our podcast guests are members of the website. Stop by via the internet and visit. Guarantee you will start to feel at home. CryptidConnection.com.
On this episode, we are interviewing Jeff Stewart. Jeff Stewart, how you doing?
I am doing wonderful. How are you guys?
Oh, we're doing all right. We're doing all right.
Can't complain.
Yeah, can't complain too much. Hey, Jeff, you're a bit of a regional celebrity out here in the South. I don't know how well known you are up north or in the Pacific Northwest, anything like that. But down here, a lot of people know you, at least in the Bigfoot community. But you also have more of a public side and everything else in general that goes outside of the Bigfoot community, because I know you're an author and you write articles for magazines and things like that. Could you go in and actually give us kind of a roundabout of who the heck you actually are?
Oh gosh, I'm a journalist. I take Fish Game magazine. I write hunting and fishing articles as well as articles on firearms, ammunition, and all of those type of things. Just anything to do with the outdoor industry. I'm also an author of cookbooks, the Texas Jack series of cookbooks. There are several of us that write those cookbooks, so it's not just one individual, but I write some of those cookbooks, the wild game and venison cookbooks and things like that, along with a friend of mine named Dennis Waller. He does more of the exotic cooking aspects of it with, infused salad dressings and vinegars and all of those kinds of things. He's a really great guy. And then I write for local newspapers, do sports writing, cover football and baseball and things like that, high school sports. And I've been, I have done several episodes of Survivor Man Bigfoot and Survivor Man TV. Les Stroud, the Survivor Man, he has his own television network in Canada, and I've done 5 episodes of his Survivor Man TV with him. And I've done Monsters and Mysteries in America and Finding Bigfoot as far as television goes. I'm also a director and actor in movies. We just finished shooting Man vs. Legend, which is a action adventure movie revolving around Bigfoot. And we did Something in the Woods, which is a Bigfoot movie, which is based on several different true accounts that our writer kind of molded into one. And I'm about to start shooting a new movie with God's Own Productions, and it's going to be a short film called Daniel.
Interesting.
I didn't know you were... me in a nutshell.
I didn't know you did any acting.
Are you
Yes,
actually
ma'am.
acting?
Yes, which
That's what he
in
said.
Something in the Woods, I didn't do any acting. I did mainly consulting on that film as far as trying to make sure that the Bigfoot things, that the way Bigfoot acted, things like that, was based on eyewitness accounts and things, so that whenever the creature was doing certain things, it wasn't just totally in the realm of fiction. It was based on eyewitness accounts. Which now in the Man versus Legend, I do act in it. I am a psychiatrist in it for our
Fascinating.
hero.
So can you tell me how
And
you
in
felt
the-
about that role?
How I felt about which role, the acting role or the
Being
consultant?
a psychiatrist. Can you tell me how you felt about that role in Man versus Legends?
I really enjoyed the role because it basically is a psychiatrist that is helping a group that suffer from PTSD, and myself being a sufferer of PTSD, it really hit home. So I tried to make that role as genuine and as caring as you would want it to be, dealing with, veterans and police officers and things like that with PTSD.
So you've been doing a lot of stuff. You're well-rounded.
Yeah, your fingers in every pie in the world of Cryptid, it sounds like.
Oh,
Well, it's not just encrypted.
that
In
and
paranormal, yes.
we have a animal rescue. I run the only rescue in the county that we live in. We started it, my wife and I, because there was only a kill shelter in the next county over, and so every dog, every animal that was taken in, they're going to keep them for about 6 or 7 days, and then they're going to euthanize them. And it just broke my heart. Now, even though I'm a hunter and everything else, and I do not want to see any animals suffer. I don't want to see any harm come, and these babies don't deserve to die. So right now we have about 40 dogs, 2 or 3 cats, and I have a pet raccoon, and do wildlife rehabilitation for the state of Texas on wild game.
Now, what region do you have your shelter at?
We're in Shelby County, Texas.
There you go, folks. If you're looking for a new pet, Shelby County, Texas. I think that's wonderful of you and your wife. I really appreciate that. Every animal
We
deserves
try
a
to
second chance.
specialize in rescuing animals that no one else will rescue, and that people basically have written off. Aggressive animals that, people are scared to have around others. We take those. Ones with special needs. We have injured dogs and cats and things that come to us, and we have a very good veterinarian, and he helps us out. And we have dogs that just can't be around children or other people like that, older dogs, younger dogs. We have dogs that have medical issues that are ongoing and treated monthly, with medications and things. And so we just really try to take in the ones that are on their last chance.
Last chance. That sounds wonderful.
I have heard, or I've gotten the impression at least, that you do some ministry work as well. Now, and I heard you make a reference
Yes,
that you were in Daniel.
Minister. I am an ordained minister, and I have a degree in theology from Baptist Christian University. That's played college football there, and left there with an. It's really. I don't want to make it sound like more than it is. Going to that college, you were required to take theological courses, biblical studies. So no matter what you majored in, you had to minor in biblical studies.
Right.
And so when I left that college, I had an associate's in biblical studies, without having my actual degree in wildlife biology and criminal justice that I was actually going for.
Okay.
My type of ministry work is more of a one-on-one. I do not preach in a church, and I've never felt the calling to get in front of a congregation and do that kind of thing. But what I love to do is to take young people, teenagers, things like that, out into the woods and teach them about animals and plants and the things that go on in the woods and that type of setting, fishing, hunting things. And while we're doing that, we have a really good conversation about their relationship with, and I don't want to push my views on religion on anyone, but I like to talk to these youngsters and just see if they have on God, on religion, and see where their heads are at, and just sit and have some really meaningful conversations and maybe help somebody along the way.
It sounds like you take a lot of Last Chance Charlies and try to turn their lives around. That's wonderful.
I really, I've had some really blessings in my life. I had a young that contacted me it's been several years ago. He had cancer, and he was 18 years old, and he was in the end stages of cancer. He had leukemia, and his one wish was for me to take him deer hunting. So I went to his house, and I picked him up, and before daylight, about 4 a.m., we drove down, we got some breakfast, cup of coffee, we drove and got in a deer stand, and we sat there, and we watched the sun come up over the pine trees, and the frost was on the ground, and that young man had never seen the sun come up like that. Wow. And we sat and we talked. And we hunted that day. We did not see anything. He didn't get to fire his gun or anything, but we had a full day, 10, 12 hours together. He passed away 2 days later. And that was one of the greatest honors of my life, was to sit in that deer stand with that young man, that one of the last things he wanted to do on this earth was spend the most precious thing he had, which was time. That commodity was the precious commodity, and that was his time, because he didn't have any left. And the only thing he wanted to do was to spend it with me. And we spent about 10 or 12 hours of the last 48 hours of his life together. And we were supposed to go back hunting the next morning, and his mother called me at about 3:30 in the morning and said that Mitchell just doesn't feel like going this morning. And I said, well, this is about him, so if he doesn't feel like going, then we won't go. And like I said, 2 days later, he passed away. Pretty hard. It really was. It was really hard on me, because no one had ever wanted to spend their last moments on earth with me. And there's just no higher honor.
Put something in that young man's head, telling him he needed to talk to you because you had something that he needed to hear. I think that's how
we talked about all kinds of things. We talked about his life up to then. We talked about the fact that he knew he was going to pass away. He knew. I mean, there wasn't any surprise in it. He knew that he was on borrowed time. And we talked about the sun coming up and about the good Lord letting him see that sun come up. Maybe he needed to see that sunrise. There was a reason that he needed to see. And we talked about that he had lived a good life. He wasn't a bad person. And that he had done the best he could with the time he was given and with the cards he was dealt. And I tried to send that young man home with a comfort in knowing, and this is my personal belief. If somebody else doesn't believe that way, I'm not mad at it. But my personal belief that there is something after we leave this mortal earth, or this physical being. There's something after. And he left my company knowing that he was going somewhere other than in the group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excuse me.
That's a treasure you gave him, though.
It is. It is.
He was one of us. I've got to spend that kind of time with, not just him, but a couple of others. And thank the good Lord that the other children that I spent that time with did not pass away. They overcame their illnesses, and they are still with us.
Jeff, I know you've been listening to us for pretty much the entire time since we started this podcast, and you know that we don't focus on encounters. We're not here to chill and thrill people or anything like that. I very much want to give a real face to the cryptid community and those people in it. With that in mind, I realize that you may have had encounters that may have gotten you involved in this community, but I'm wanting to know, what was it that actually got you involved? I mean, how was your experience that first kind of got into it? What happened?
I grew up in the 70s, and my only original exposure to anything cryptozoological or anything, and at that time, I had no clue what the word cryptozoological meant, was going to the drive-in movies, seeing movies like The Creature from Black Lake, Boggy Creek, the subsequent other Boggy Creek movies and things like that, but I never gave any of that any thought. It just wasn't in my mind. It was a monster movie. Yeah, it was good at the drive-in. And then about 1985 or 86, I went camping with some friends down on the Sabine River, a piece of property that we own. And we had went and caught a bunch of fish, and we were camping out, and we had cleaned those fish at a old hand pump well that we had on the property there close to our cabin. And what we would do is we would leave the fish heads and guts and things on the ground there by that well, and later at night, the raccoons and hogs and things like that would come over and eat them. We would sneak back over with a flashlight, and we would shoot the raccoons or whatever. I used the hides. I would sell them for money as a teenager. And if it was a hog, of course, we killed it and ate it. So that night we cooked our fish and sat around the fire for a little while. And it was about 100 yards between our cabin and where we would clean our game, because we didn't want to clean it right under our cabin. And I told my friends, I want to walk back over there, and I'm going to, shoot the coons. Let's go. And they said, we don't want to go. We're just fine by the fire. Mm-hmm. So I grabbed my 22 caliber rifle and a flashlight. If anybody grew up in the 70s and 80s, you know what kind of flashlights we had. We did not have the high intensity LED, 1,000, 2,000 lumen lights like we have now. And so I took my little yellow dim bulb flashlight and walked over there. And there was something I could see in my light that was at the gut. I thought it was a hog. Looked too big to be a raccoon. So as I inched my way closer, apparently it saw the light and it stood up. And it stood up erect on two legs. Ooh. At that point in time, I was probably 20 yards at the most from this thing. And in my mind, it had to be a person. And growing up in the river bottom, I'd heard tales of old hermits that lived out in the river bottom, and, stay away from there because old hermit lives back in. And that's what it had to be in my eyes. And as I looked at this thing, of course, the body had hair on it. The face looked more like an Australian Aboriginal rather than anybody I had ever seen. Mm-hmm. Just from now being an adult and looking back and have seen those documentaries and things on the Australian Aboriginals from back in the early 1900s and things, that's what this looked like in the face. And I spoke to it because, to me, it was a person. And I said, mister, I don't know who you are, but I'm scared and I'm going to shoot you. And it just looked at me. And I spoke again as I took a couple of steps forward with my rifle aimed at it. And I said, mister, I said I'm going to shoot you if you don't tell me who you are. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. It took 3 steps backwards, toe to heel. As it got those 3 steps backwards, it got in the edge of the woods. As it did, it turned and walked away. Now, I went back over and told my buddies what had happened, and they laughed at me and ridiculed me, and yeah, whatever, you're just trying to scare us. Next morning, we went back over to the well site, and in the mud around where we'd been pumping water, there were barefoot tracks. And at that time, wore a size 13 tennis shoe. And I could step my size 13 tennis shoe in that human-looking footprint inside of it. And of course my friend said, yeah, you came over here last night and you made those tracks, and they ridiculed me. And I shut up. I didn't tell anybody for a long time. Went home, told my parents, and they laughed at me and said, yeah, whatever. And so that got me started. But it wasn't until about 10 years later, my father and I had been camping and fishing, and we had caught a whole bunch of fish. Again, this happens around our fish. And we had about 150 pounds of catfish. And we put them in a live trap, a live box, and floated them out in the water because we didn't want to skin them right then. We were going to have the fish fry the next day. We were going to come get them that morning, clean them, and fry them. This was in February, so it was cold. We drove down the next morning to our cabin, and our box was pulled completely up out of the water onto the land, on what we call the bank, on the sandbar. And it was open, and the lid was tied closed, and it had a spring hinge. Something had untied it, opened the spring hinge door, and it sat there and ate catfish. There were catfish heads, and where all the soft, fleshy parts had been eaten off, and the bones were just thrown on the ground. And probably 10, 15 catfish had been eaten, just thrown on the ground. And amongst all of that, in the mud, were bare, human-looking, large footprints. Now, we're not talking 22, 23-inch long, but we're talking about somebody that might have a 15, 16-inch track, way bigger than my foot, wearing, now as an adult, I wear a size 14 shoe. And my bare footprint isn't even that big. So it was bare, and my dad looked at me, and my dad said, it's true. And I said, what's true, Dad? And he said, those stories you told. He said, there's nothing that could have made this. Who in their right mind would have been walking in 30-some-odd degree weather in bare feet in the wet mud and sat here and ate 10 to 15 raw catfish?
Good question.
And that is the instant right then that I said, I've got to research. I've got to find out. Now, up until then, I'm a very knowledgeable wildlife person. I've been called by other people, such as Chester Moore and, a lot of animal people and writers and journalists here in Texas. I've been called one of the most knowledgeable animal experts in Texas. And it just led me to know that I had to research these creatures, these animals, this Sabine thing, as we call it, which is our version of Bigfoot, the cat-o critter, whatever they want to call it. Same thing. And I started just devouring anything I could on the subject, with reading materials that dated back as far back as I could find. A lot of stuff by one of the greats, Mr. Lauren Coleman, and just anybody that had ever written any kind of literature on the Yeti, the Bigfoot, on any of this stuff, and started corresponding with these people at, 25, 26 years old. That was back before computers were a big thing, so it was corresponding by mail with a lot of these people, and most of them were gracious enough to write back. or give me a telephone number to call them and talk to. And so that episode really started my lifelong passion to study these animals and to, I want to say, more verified and justified in my own eye, rather than try to prove to the world that they are real.
Jeff, in regards to the knowledge that you've acquired throughout the years and the education you have in regards to wildlife and the research, what would you say that you're not very good at and you would like to improve upon in regards to field research for cryptid education?
You know, one of the things, I'm not a person that goes after some of the other creatures. If it doesn't basically exist in my area, my geographical location, I don't spend a lot of time on it, and I should. But things, Ohio grassman and different creatures like that, and the Mothman, stuff like that. I get a lot of questions. People want to ask me about that when I go speak places, and I have to apologize to them because, those creatures, I don't research them because I don't go to Point Pleasant or I don't go to Ohio and research these animals. So I really don't spend a lot of time filling my head with the knowledge of them. Mm-hmm. I prefer to put knowledge about my local cryptids in my head. But I really would, I feel like I should broaden my horizons more, but I have not had any opportunities to go outside other than Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, within, say, a 400 or 500 mile radius of where I live. But, I would like to do that someday, is maybe, if that answers that. I'm sorry.
No. What about your local cryptid, the Bigfoot? What would you think you want to improve upon in regards to your research techniques for him?
I really, honestly, I have tried to fill myself with as much knowledge about my local things as possible. I spend a lot of time. I'm very good friends with Ken Gerhard, Nick Redfern, Lyle Blackburn. The late Tom Shirley, who just passed away, was a very close friend of mine and probably one of the most unsung cryptozoologists that I ever knew, because Tom never tooted his own horn. He never tried to promote himself, and he was probably one of the most knowledgeable people I ever met. So, every day I try to cram more knowledge from these guys into my head, and vice versa. They call me and ask me things, and we share. All of us share so much, and there's so much that I need to learn, because if we ever think that we know it all, then we know nothing.
Well, could you tell me I'm sorry, Jeff, could you tell me something that's true in regards to that you think that is true, but nobody else may agree with you on?
My research and my sightings, when people, I'm somewhat narrow-minded, because when people tell me that they've seen creatures that I pretty much know can't exist in our forest here in East Texas, because one, if you're covered in a fur coat from head to toe and it's thick and lush fur and 112 degrees, I just can't, it just doesn't compute in my brain that is based in animal science. And when people tell me that they see one that when they describe the face, they describe a monkey or a gorilla. And I know that the ones that I have been face to face with in my lifetime looked nothing like a monkey or a gorilla. And I think I need to be a little more open-minded about, the difference in appearance of some of these creatures, that they can look different, because you and I don't look the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we both have the same relative features and all of those things, but if you put us side by side, we got different shaped faces. We have different things. So maybe there is, you know, a Labrador Retriever doesn't look like a Collie. They're both dogs. So there is a possibility that these creatures do look differently. And I just think I need to open my mind a little more to the appearance aspect.
While we're talking about your research efforts and the things you think, I want your personal, unbiased, unfiltered opinion. You and I have had this discussion a little bit before off microphone. I really want to know, what is it you think that half of us at least are probably chasing, if it's not Bigfoot, and as far as audio recordings are going?
I get sent dozens of audio recordings a month, sometimes in the hundreds, to listen to. People, oh, I got this last night down here on the creek bank or off over here. And most of the time, within minutes, I listen to it and I can tell them, well, that's a fox. And people don't really understand that a fox has a huge vocabulary of sounds they make. Wolves, coyotes, they all have a lot of different sounds that they make. Barred owls, raccoons, there's just so many different animals. One guy sent me this sound and it ended up being a bronze frog. And, you know, I told him, yeah, I've heard that sound a lot down in the swamps, and it's a frog. And he just got mad at me, you know, just, oh no, this is a Bigfoot. I get people swear this is a Bigfoot. And I've made it one of my goals in life to learn the sounds and the vocabulary of every animal. White-tailed deer have over 100 vocalizations that they make. And a lot of people don't know that.
So you've had the experience of well, like you said, where you've had a lot of people bring you stuff over the years, and they want you to listen to it, and they want your confirmation, and instead you're having to break their heart because, you know, they thought they had a Bigfoot or something like that, and instead, you know, they've got like you said, a frog or a fox or, you know, any other number of things. Has that caused you a lot of grief? Being, you know, or do you find that people kind of accept what you say, or do they just kind of get mad at you, storm off, and next thing you know, they're talking bad about you? I mean, what's your experience?
You know, I've had it happen both ways. I've had people, you know, say, "Oh, thank you. That's why I came to you, is because I knew you would know." Then I've had people that just kept shopping their audio recording around to different people until they found someone that said, "Oh yeah, you got a Bigfoot. That's a Bigfoot. Without a doubt, that's a Bigfoot." And I never, even if I get a recording that I suspect is an actual vocalization from a Bigfoot, I never tell them without a doubt I know that's a Bigfoot, because we've never studied the vocalizations of Bigfoot. So none of us can be 100% sure. Now, in theory, I theorize that Bigfoot are mimickers from what I've heard in the woods. When you hear animals that usually don't call at night, animals that usually don't make certain sounds, and you hear them at night, and you hear variations from those sounds that don't really belong, then I'll tell people, you know, you may have caught something valid, but I can't tell you 100% sure, because none of us can. There's no such thing on this earth as a Bigfoot expert. I correct people all the time if they bill me at where I'm speaking at an engagement or something. If they bill me as a Bigfoot expert, I say, no, I'm not a Bigfoot expert. I'm a wildlife expert, and I am a Bigfoot researcher. But, you know, you can't have a Bigfoot expert until we have known Bigfoot to research. You know, we know we've got 100% scientific proof that this is a Bigfoot, and we research it. Just like, you know, the gorillas were researched for years upon years upon years before we had 100% proof of what they did.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
It does. It
Yeah.
does very much. How, this is going to sound really weird. How have you suffered for your cryptid fascination? Has it made anything in your life difficult? Have you had any issue with your professional life being impacted or anything like that? Or have you been one of the lucky ones that, hey, this really has been positive the whole way around? I mean, what's been your experience over the years?
I have been ridiculed. I have been made fun of. I still get ridiculed. In my hometown, walk in the store, there's old Bigfoot. People make fun and do everything. And I used to get upset about it, but now I just let it roll off because it's just, I tell people I'm from Tenaha, Texas, a town that has and probably published. I've been on television. People think that what I have to say was worth listening to. We go to events and Bigfoot conferences and different things and come to listen to me talk. And I think that is a blessing, and I look at it for an actual and just try to let the other go. But yeah, it's impacted me more negative than anything in my professional career and everything else, being an electrician. Because once people saw me on TV and they would be like, man, you can't really believe that, you're crazy and everything. So you get labeled as being crazy, and all of a sudden, people don't want to hire you, or people don't want you working on their equipment and things like that because you're the old crazy Bigfoot guy. It's almost as bad as being the old crazy cat lady.
Mm.
And I tell people all the time, if this weren't true, if my sightings, my experiences, and my things weren't true, I would never have said it because, one, there's literally, I've made no money off of this. I mean, my books sell, and I may have made a total of a few $100s over the past 10 or 15 years. When you do these TV shows, they do not pay you to do most of these shows. They don't like say, oh, here's a big, huge check. No, they will pay for your travel and they will feed you and things like that, but they don't hand you a big exuberant check for being on, say, Finding Bigfoot. To be on Finding Bigfoot, I mean, you don't get paid.
Mm.
Most of the conferences that I go speak at, they cover your hotel room and your food, and some of them are gracious and give you a small amount of money, but most of the time, the only money you make at these conferences is if you sell knickknacks and books and things at your table.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not worth it if you're thinking you're going to get rich, because there's very, very few people that have gotten rich off of saying, hey, I saw Bigfoot.
Isn't that the truth?
I'm not sure I can think of a single one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I mean, most everybody that that is on TV has a secondary job. They
Right.
make money on other things other than just doing Bigfoot stuff.
So then I'm going to take it as a big fat yes that you,
Big fat yes, sir.
you have suffered repercussions for this, and you have pursued it
Oh, yeah.
in spite of that.
Family too. Family, like, oh my gosh, you're not saying Bigfoot's real. Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. That kind of thing.
I got to admit, I share that with you. I am now the black sheep of my family, thanks to Bigfoot. It just doesn't matter. Every reunion or get-together we have, I am now the butt of some joke. I am the snicker, and it gets old. It really does. I mean, there's a certain point when I really sit there and say, I don't want to be here for Thanksgiving. I'd rather be out in the woods with 4 or 5 other squatchers.
Well, you don't mind my family, because at least my dad says something to the effect of, you don't touch them, they don't touch you.
Yeah,
that's all he gets to.
This is true. Your father actually is pretty open-minded, and he doesn't do anything like that. My family, on the other hand, are a bunch of jerks. I mean, they just go off, and sometimes...
This may be an edit point, because your mama's going to listen to this episode.
Sorry, Mother. I don't know if I'm going to edit this one or not, but... Yeah, I have 2 brothers specifically that are really bad, and the only thing I can think of is, I don't know if it's actually a Bible quote or a misquote or something like that, but I want to say there's a saying. It says that the messenger or the prophet or whatever is never accepted in his own town, or whatever. There's something that says something like that. And the idea is because that's the people who know you, who grew up with you, and they're going to think you're nuts. They'll always assume the worst of you. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that is oftentimes what families do. Your siblings especially.
I try to rationalize some of it, and I talk to people, and especially people in my community who are Christians, and I'm like, well, do you believe what is taught in the Bible? And these people, oh, yeah, wholeheartedly, the Bible. And I'm like, well, there are lots of creatures spoken about in the Bible. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that those creatures existed? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, even people, they talk about Goliath and how tall and how big Goliath was. He was a giant. Do you believe that giants existed? Mm-hmm. King Nog. They said, basically, when they described King Nog, he was over 9 feet tall, and his whole body was covered in hair. And, one of the rulers of ancient Rome, Maximus Thrax, said at 12 years old he could pull a laden cart by himself. His shoe, they have casts of him, and he was like 8 feet tall, and all of these things. People exist. Even today, we have Shaquille O'Neal and basketball players that are over 7 feet tall. Mm-hmm. So if you believe that these creatures and that these people existed and do exist today, why can we not believe that there is a creature that has remained hidden? If you take a creature that is as intellectual as we are, but instead of wasting their intellect on video games, cell phones, books, things like that, every ounce of their intelligence has been spent learning how to stay away from mankind, because mankind has equaled death ever since time began. Mm-hmm. And they have spent all of their intellect learning how to hunt, how to live, and how to stay away from us. That would be a creature that is just amazing, because as simple a creature as they may be, at the same time, say one has a IQ in their perspective of 120, 130, just like there are human beings with IQs of 120, 130, 180, things like that. Think how hard it would be to hunt down and find that animal, that creature.
Mm-hmm. And what are their usual responses?
I'm crazy.
There goes all rational thought. At the same
time, I believe in Bigfoot and I chase Bigfoot and I'm crazy, but these same people, when they have a sick dog or a horse or cow or anything else, my phone's ringing and they're like, can you please come to my house? My poor dog is dying. Can you help me? And I'm at their house at 3:00 in the morning, nursing their sick animal back to health. I'm sane enough and enough of a good person that I can come save their animals from death's door. But at the same time, mention Bigfoot and, oh, I'm crazy.
Yeah, the double standard really can get old. I totally can understand that. And I don't think that is necessarily something a lot of people realize. They, especially when you're more of a public figure like you have been.
Right. Exactly. And, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, Why would someone come forward and say this when they know what kind of ridicule it's going to get them if it wasn't true?
Okay. After we're speaking about ridicule and embarrassment and things like that, I think that's a great segue into Jennifer's little torture session known as the Quick Cryptid Connection Query. I said it correctly this time. Oh, wow. I can't believe I did that.
I might let you have your fiddle.
Oh.
I need to school you on that. I need to take that from you. But anyway, I might let you have your fiddle toy back as long as you don't make all the racket you were doing earlier.
I won't make my racket, I promise.
No, but that's the problem you were. So this is your first.
We're going to have to edit this whole conversation out. You realize that? No one knows how much we bicker.
No, let's give you the Quick Cryptid Connection query tonight. And let you name off
You
the
want me
names.
to do it? Okay. I've actually been curious about this, so...
Can you pronounce them all? Okay, so the way this works, Jeff, is that we will give you a sequence of cryptid names. And there are 2 Easter eggs among them, one being a Bigfoot cousin, one being a formerly known cryptid, now proven true animal, which I expect you to be pretty good at. Of these names, I want you to say yay for those you believe in or have heard of, and nay for those you have not believed. You have no idea, you don't believe in at all.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yes, it does.
Any questions?
Let's go. Sounds
All
fun.
right.
Okay, she's going to let me read them off.
He's always teasing me about my pronunciations,
Yes.
even though I read them beforehand.
Here we go. Number 1. The Dobar Chu.
I have never heard of it. So I will say nay.
Okay. The Ozark Howler.
Yay. And that would be a Bigfoot cousin.
That's true. The Minho Cow.
I have heard that name, and I'm on the fence with it have been a animal that may have once been thought not to exist and now does. I can't remember, but I have heard that name.
Let's see here. I'm going to spell it just to make sure that we are talking about the same thing, because it's an Asian word and my pronunciation wants to say minnow cow, and that's not right, I don't think. It is spelled Minhocao. And so I'm
Sounds
saying
like you pronounced it right to me.
Okay.
I would have pronounced it the same way.
Okay, fair enough then. Just make sure. All right, here comes our next one. This isn't fair. The skunk ape.
Yay, Bigfoot cousin. Florida.
Just give the damn quiz.
Tsuchinoko.
Have not heard of that one. I will say nay.
The platypus.
The platypus
Suck at your
is
quizzes.
a monotreme. It is a real live animal. They have spurs on their hind legs that have venom in them. They are awesome little aquatic creatures.
Okay.
So that would be a big yay.
Yep. Miniwashitu.
Miniwashitu. That is Native American sounding name. And I would say it would have to be a yay.
Okay. Kikayaon.
That one I've never heard of. Nay.
Okay. And last but not least, this name came straight from Klingon, I think. It's Morgquar.
Morgcar.
Morgcar. Morgcar.
Never heard of that one. Nay.
Morgkawr.
The Morgcar.
The Morgcar. It did.
Yep.
All right, Jennifer. What? First off, he got the Easter eggs correct, because Ozark Howler is a cryptid, or is a Bigfoot relative.
It actually was described in my resources as a wolf man.
And see, I'm not a believer in dog man as being any type of wolfman type canine human hybrid kind of thing. I think that all dog men are a subspecies of Bigfoot creatures.
So you're thinking that they are essentially a badly described type of Bigfoot?
No, I just think that, you have Bigfoot creatures that are described as short. You have ones that are really tall, depending on geographical locations. You have creatures that have longer snouts, faces that look like more primitive man, as in Heidelbergenses and all of those ancient human-looking Bigfoot. You have the monkey-faced Bigfoots. You have, I think that some of the longer-snouted Bigfoot creatures have gotten the term dogman thrown at them.
Okay, I see that. And that also makes sense with what you were talking about before, about your own biases and everything else, about hearing things that are very difficult to reason with the rest of the natural environment and the flora and fauna that you know. Something's got to exist in nature. It's got to make sense with nature and everything, I think is how you said it. And that does.
Right, because in my eyes, knowing the animal kingdom, there is no precedent for a upright walking bipedal dog or canid in any literature back as far as we can go, other than folklore and mythology and things like that. That's the only place we get the dog human hybrid. That can't actually happen in nature.
Now, I've always had a problem with Dogman because it seems like it's only been around since about 1998 or 2000. And it used to just, you never heard of it. No one ever reported it or anything like that. And then the internet came along, and lo and behold, now everybody sees Dogman. Do you think that's a little bit odd? Do you think it's an artificial construct, or do you think that people are they are seeing something? I guess in some circumstances people got to be seeing something. But I guess what I'm saying, do you think that there is a greater possibility in either misidentification or even just outright hoaxing of some sort with regard to dogmen as opposed to Bigfoot? I guess that's what I'm asking.
If you look back through history at the first reported sightings of the dogman, and you look at what was going on in Hollywood at the time. I'm a special effects nut. I do special effects for movies and things like that. I build masks and things, latex masks and things. There were really no reported dogman sightings until the Howling movie came about. And they really did some awesome things in that movie. American Werewolf in London, those type movies came out with some really good special effects. And then all of a sudden you started getting pelted with just hundreds and hundreds of dogman sightings. And in my opinion, now I'm not calling anyone a liar, I think that these people saw something. I really do. I think, the majority of them really did see something. But I think once you get an image of something stuck in your mind, when you see something similar to that image, your mind automatically is going to go to it. It's a case in point. Everybody sees rattlesnakes. Every time they're working in the yard and they see a little brown grass snake, an earth snake, a young rat snake, it's a rattlesnake. It's automatically, I saw a rattlesnake. But it's not. They look similar, but our mind, we're not lying. These people are not lying about what they saw. Their mind is telling them that they saw a dangerous snake, a rattlesnake, when they didn't. If that makes sense to you.
No, it does. It does in a great deal. That's entirely a perfectly rational and logical thing to think. I can agree with you 100% on that.
And I know people are going to get mad and say, "Oh, I saw a dog man. I know it was a dog man, and it looked like this and everything." I want to be clear that I'm not saying they're lying or fabricating or hoaxing. There is an element that does do that, but I'm not accusing anyone I don't know, and I have not studied their case. But at the same time, I know in my own research, when I'm interviewing people that have seen a Bigfoot creature, whenever Monster Quest was on and all of these Bigfoot shows over the past several years, I got just a massive amount of sightings reported to me when those shows were on the air. Now that all of those shows are not on the air, we don't have a lot of Bigfoot shows on Discovery and Animal Planet and things like that. It's calmed down. So have my sighting reports. So there is a certain amount of hysteria that goes into these shows being on the air and everybody watching them, and all of a sudden they've seen whatever creature is being pushed the most on television.
Okay, that makes sense. I would definitely agree. That explains a great deal of what you see in the community over the years. And I've seen it.
Watch the trends. If you go back and research it, watch the trends.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever a big blockbuster movie comes out and it's got a Bigfoot creature or a monster of that sort, a bipedal, upright walking creature, you get more sightings. You can go back and look on the BFRO's database and things like that. And if you look, all these sightings came in this one particular year. If you research what was going on in Hollywood in those particular times, there were movies being made, being produced, television shows being made and being produced that pushed that kind of creature, that being.
I think I've said it
so
before.
I don't think they're lying. I just think they're influenced by what they've seen.
Right. I think I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again.
Guests of Cryptid Connection are all members of the Cryptid Connection website. Join the community, a safe, secure, and private place for all your paranormal and cryptid pursuits.
He always misses when he's aiming at the target in his head. And every broken man finds his idle hands grasping at tomorrow's promised land. And I've been thinking about running, and I'll get out on the town just for myself. And that's when I saw her, and she looked right through me. And when I said I do that day, I really do. 'Cause every cowboy, he always misses his shot when he's aiming at the target in his head. thinking about riding, and when I get the first draft back with no red ink, but I've been thinking to do my best work. Yeah, I've gotta leave this town to find my way. And when that plane touched down on that island town, I knew that my life's work was in their hands. So I started digging for wells of water, and I'm a hero in their eyes. It's clear to see. 'Cause every cowboy, he always misses his shot when he's aiming at the target in his head. And every broken man finds his idol hand, grasping at tomorrow's promised land. And I've been thinking about the time that I have wasted sitting here. 'Cause I've been thinking that all this thinking is the thing that keeps me further from myself.
The music and soundtrack for the opening is from Epic Film Score by Alex Kaskin. The closing credits are Every Cowboy by Cellophane Sam.